101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. Special welcome to our listeners on love101.org. And if you are overseas and on the move, U.S. listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you are in the UK, 0330-332-6541. Or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us live on Love 101 FM, YouTube, and Facebook Live. In the main watch today, should there be preferential treatment for persons who receive the COVID shot? And in the second watch, should a child be given the COVID-19 jab without parental consent? For our Facebook question, we asked, what would your response be if your under 18-year-old child was given the COVID-19 vaccine without your consent? Share your responses on our Facebook or YouTube, Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, or WhatsApp comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125. We'll share your response later on the program, but first, here's our quote.
This morning's I quote: Fortune converts everything to the advantage of her favorites. Francois.
So, Shivani, give us the interpretation, sir.
You have to help me out.
I'm waiting for you to interpret.
Good one.
Fortune converts everything to the advantage of her favorites. I'll work with that one. Yes. The main one. We'll be back after this break.
Clear Sound Production Services in association with Kevin Downswell Ministries present 658 Fest. Thank you. With Kevin Downswell, Rhoda Isabella, Rondell Positive, Chosen, Petra K, and Ali McNabb. Tickets 3,000, VIP 6,000 at spur.open.com/658fest. Saturday, August 7, 3 to 7 p.m. Police Officers Club, 34 Hope Road. COVID protocols will be observed. An attitude of gratitude. 658 Fest. Thank you. JUTC available to downtown Spanish Town and Portmore after the show.
DJ Bongs. Make we rich together with Digicel. Just call 142 or dial *142 $ from your prepaid phone for a chance to win your share of $42 million in cash and prizes. Enter to get $500 bonus credit. Smartphone users get 500 megabytes any use data and 1 gigabyte BIP data, while non-smartphone users get 10 minutes and 50 SMS free for Digicel to Digicel calls and texts. Each entry costs $100. From now until September 14th, make we rich together with Digicel. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming, and Lotteries Act.
Oh my gosh, guess what? We're at the next stop of the I Love Summer Tour, St. James.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I am your host, Stokely Marshall. The suggestion is that preferential treatment should be given to persons who have been vaccinated, specifically teachers, and suggested by Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Is this a fair way to go? And what is considered preferential? Why is this even a consideration? We have online to discuss this morning Public Defender Arlene Harrison Henry and founder, chief ideator of Above or Beyond, the psychologist, Dr. Leakim Samaj. Dr. Samaj, Ms. Arlene Harrison Henry, good morning to you both. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Morning.
Now, first of all, I'm going to start with you, Dr. Samaj. I have a sense as to what you are thinking about this concerning this matter. Do you think that persons should be given preferential treatment if they have received the COVID-19 shot? And if so, why, sir?
Well, yes, there should be. And look, I take a broad look at society, and that which facilitates our collective survival is really what we make sure that we encourage and we put in place. Now, leadership has specific responsibilities. We know two things so far. There's science that guides our thinking. One, mask prevent the transmission of this virus. So it's the role of leadership to make sure that persons wear masks. And whether you can do two things, you can make it positive for those who do and make it negative for those who don't, because our collective survival is your responsibility. Vaccination prevents hospitalization and death. Again, it is our responsibility to facilitate our collective survival, so that you nudge things in one way or the other. You don't leave things to democratic sanity. So, all right, well, you know what you feel to do is okay with me. No, we have to protect the collective survival of our people. So that's what my position. That's the side I come down.
Suppose someone, for whatever reason, doesn't want the vaccine. It can be a reason that seems sensible, or it could be a reason that seems perfectly sensible. For example, I give an example of a reason that could be perfectly sensible. It might be a religious reason. Your thoughts?
Well, again, in my mind, religious reasons are not necessarily sensible reasons. Religion does not necessarily.
I'm saying that they are because I don't want to insult anyone's religion.
No. We don't insult. Look, we're treating this as if this is a. When I was traveling to Trinidad a few months ago, one of the requirements of me traveling to Trinidad, I had to get a yellow fever vaccine. C'est la vie. When my children were young, before they were admitted in school, there was a whole battery of vaccine, and the vaccination cards had to be up to date, because the role of society is to facilitate the collective survival. So all of a sudden now we are figuring there's a different set of rules. Every one of us have this mark on our shoulders for our BCG vaccines and so on. So I see nothing different. The collective survival, if a child is to be admitted in school, there's a battery of vaccination. If you're traveling to a particular country, there's a battery of vaccination, which again will ensure your health and the health of the other people around you. So we are in a pandemic. The vaccine has been developed. And my understanding is that the data is showing us that the United States has a very incredible data set. 99.9% of the people who have died so far since this new outbreak are those who have not been vaccinated. So I'm not going to play games with this and say it's up to you if you want to.
And if in terms of reasons that may seem sensible or not sensible, someone might say, well, as far as they understand, the vaccines were approved only for emergency use, and they're not too sure about.
Well, if you're not too sure, well, look, emergency use, because we're in an emergency, and the protocol required so far, all the dots have not been identified, but the data is accumulating in one direction. If you wish to opt out, then you do so on your own, so that we can't. I think we have a responsibility to go with the best answer. You know, there's a line in science, the best fit data point. And the best fit data point at this point is the mask, sanitization, social distance, vaccination. And if you wish to opt out of it, then you do so on your own.
I wasn't quite finished with the question, but heard what you said, and something you said made me even need to ask this aspect of the question even more. The person might argue, well, you know, if I have an adverse reaction, which has happened, which could even include death, there's no recourse against the company that made the vaccine. Your thoughts on that, sir?
Every action, there's very few things that is 100%, but it's part of the collective responsibility we have. First of all, myself as a parent, I made that choice for my children, I ensured that they got vaccine. My adult children, I did everything in my power to facilitate their vaccination. But so I will accept the responsibility because I think it's in the collective interest. Now, if you choose not to, then that's a different story. But for me, certain risks are worth taking. No,
Okay.
To wait
I
until
want to bring in the public defender, Ali
Sure.
Harrison Henry. Mrs. Harrison Henry, your thoughts on the matter? Should there be preferential treatment for the persons who receive the COVID shot?
I think it's a difficult question, but I certainly don't support preferential treatment in any form. I think preferential treatment being given to persons who receive the vaccination is actually a form of making vaccination mandatory. Now, I think that what we need to look at is whether or not there is any established policy. And so far, what we're seeing are hints at mandatory vaccination, suggestions that mandatory vaccinations will be introduced, and so on. We have not seen a developed policy or any law in relation to it. I think the matter of vaccinations is a complex issue. My learned friend has spoken about childhood vaccinations, and I would beg to differ that these are different from childhood vaccinations. And let me just clarify what I mean. Childhood vaccinations are vaccines that have been tried and tested time over many, many years. These vaccines have been introduced under emergency measures. And I agree, there was an emergency. But one of the things that we also have to bear in mind is that they do not have the history and record of childhood vaccination. So I think we need to move from that place and look at some more critical issues. We're talking about mandatory vaccination in the context where there are not sufficient vaccines on the island for people who may opt to be vaccinated. We have to look also, since we're so inextricably bound to the WHO. When last I checked, they were not recommending mandatory vaccination, whether on your national territory or for travel. What this mandatory vaccination will do is that people will have passes. If I need to go to a restaurant, I will pull out my pass and show that is a COVID pass or a COVID passport to say, here it is, I can enter. But there are many other factors that we need to look at, such as the necessity and proportionality, sufficient evidence of vaccine safety. And I think we not only need to look at our experience, we need to look at the experience around the world. We need also to look at evidence of vaccine efficacy and effectiveness. We're now hearing that those of us who took the 2 jabs may need a booster shot. What does that say about the efficacy and effectiveness? We need also to ensure that there's an ample supply for those who want it. And above all, something that we do not play regard to is public trust.
Can you hold that thought right there, Mrs. Harrison Henry, because we're upon a break. Please stay with us, listeners. Dr. Samaj and Mrs. Harrison Henry, we will continue with you just after the break. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
This is Love 101 at 7:15.
NIS Pension Pensioners, avoid the wait. Get your NIS pension straight to your bank account. It's easy. Simply visit the Ministry of Labor and Social Security's website, mlss.gov.jm, or the nearest NIS office and collect the direct deposit application form. Then complete the form and submit it along with supporting documents to the NIS office nearest you. Avoid crowds and long lines. Get your money when you want it. The National Insurance Scheme, always working for you.
Clear Sound Production Services in association with Kevin Downswell Ministries present 658 Best Thank You with Kevin Downswell, Rhoda Isabella, Rondell Positive, Chosen, Petra K, and Ali McNabb. Tickets 3,000, VIP 6,000 at SpurOpen.com/658Fest. Saturday, August 7, 3 to 7 p.m. Police Officers Club, 34 Hope Road. COVID protocols will be observed. An attitude of gratitude. 658 Fest. Thank you. JUTC available to downtown Spanish Town and Portmore after the show.
Bills to pay and funds to transfer? No problem. I do it all on my time with JN Bank Live Online Banking. It's my simple and secure as that online banking.
Phone credit need a top up? No problem. I do it with JN Bank Live Online Banking.
It's quick and easy with just a few clicks. JN Bank Live, online banking that goes where you go. Sign up today. Visit jnbank.com. JN Bank will help you find a way.
Well, welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. We are in the main watch. The topic is, should there be preferential treatment for persons who receive the COVID shot? And our guests in this segment, Arlene Harrison Henry, public defender, and Dr. Leah Kim Samaj, founder, chief ideator of Above or Beyond, and psychologist. Miss Arlene Harrison Henry, just before the break, you were making a point about trust. Would you like to continue, ma'am?
I'm grateful for that opportunity. One of the things that we have said repeatedly on the radio and at every opportunity that we get is that, and this is from last year, March, so let me put a timeline to it, is that there was need for mass community engagement in the fight against COVID. We were of the view that all the organs, all the committees, including committees, volunteers, NGOs, were to be engaged in the fight against COVID because there was need to ensure that our resources reached individuals in the communities in which they live. It is all well and good for us to say this is what the collective requires, but we have to communicate confidence in the vaccine to the man on the ground in his community. He may be a farmer, he may be a fisher folk, she may be a housewife, and so on. And I think that we may have missed out on that. And let me just say that I'm not at all saying that the parish municipal corporation committees were not needed. That's not what I'm saying. They continue to have their monthly meetings that include public health. What I'm talking is taking it from there into the community, into the nooks and crannies of Jamaica. And I have a problem with the inadequate engaging the public when engaging the public when developing vaccination strategies in the form and context of key communication. Because what we really have is a situation where announcements are made and everybody's to fall in line. We live in a different world. We see people all over Europe demonstrating against mandatory vaccination. we see people who are vaccinated having become infected. Much of the data, it may not be analyzed down to the last, but we see that there is a groundswell of persons, all of whom have to be taken into account. Their safety is very important, who are against it. And I'm saying that we live in a different world today where people require, and the message needs to be at the community. This is something we said from last year, March. But of course, we continue to communicate from the head up at the top, and it is supposed to filter down. I think we live in a different age. I think persons who talked about mandatory vaccinations from last year, March, were laughed at last year, March. They were scoffed at and described as conspiracy theories from last year, March. Well, today, there is talk all over the world about mandatory vaccination. And you have to pull back and say, well, what it is they knew then, what it is they were seeing then, that others of us didn't when they were the greatest laughing stock in last year, March, when they were talking about mandatory vaccination. And I think we need to come to the table, moving past childhood vaccinations, which we all have. This is different. It's a completely different scenario.
As you spoke, Mrs. Harrison Henry, I'm seeing a comment coming here to me. This comment is in relation to, well, I'll just read what it says. But this vaccine is benefiting from history and advancements in medical science. And it comes before I go back to Dr. Simon. Mrs. Harrison Henry?
Yes, and I agree. And I agree. It is not a overnight vaccine that has been developed. I agree that this has been science that has taken time to develop. And that is why the communication to the Jamaican people becomes so important. So though it is an emergency approval given, it was being developed over many years. I agree 100%. But those are some of the messages that need to be taken out to the Jamaican people, explained, well, why it is, though it is emergency, that it can still be trusted.
Very interesting. Dr. Saman, sir?
Yes, sir.
You have heard Mrs. Harrison Henry, and although our focus is on the topic as framed, she made some interesting comments about messaging and communities. Any comments on that?
My brother, I'm in total agreement with everything she has said. Because my main critique is that the government has mismanaged this thing, because you can't manage something that is by press conferences and press releases. All right? But the moot that I'm dealing with is just one thing. If you do not give preferential treatment to vaccine, then the alternative is to treat everybody as if they are COVID positive, which in a sense is what the US has now decided to do because of the problem they have with the Republican governors who have said that they will not enforce mandates for masks or vaccines. So everyone in the US now is being encouraged, whether you're vaccinated or not, to wear a mask once you're indoors and to observe social distance and all of that. So that's what it comes down to. Treat everyone as if they're COVID positive. Everyone must wear a mask, because we know for sure that masks stop the transmission. But we also know the evidence is accumulating quickly that vaccination prevents hospitalization and death, 99.9%. And that's my simple point, the facilitation of the collective survival. In my own life, I ensure that persons that I have responsibility for are vaccinated, because the evidence, no, I'm not in the sophistry. And while we debate the government's mismanagement of the problem and all of that, I'm full agreement with that. But at the end of the day, if we do not enforce vaccination strategies, yes, and vaccination passport, look what has happened in Florida with the cruise ship industry. Because the governor insists that there should be no differential between people who are vaccinated and those who are not. So there's a whole thing that the cruise ships are trying to take the governor to court, rightfully so. And the cruise ships that have gone back into business, obeying the governor's mandate, once they get back out on the sea, you start hearing about the positive, and then all of a sudden they have to quarantine the entire ship and start all over again. We are in an emergency, and we have to be very careful. We have to handle this thing properly, but at the same time, we know what works, and we have to, within the context of the data we have to enforce policies based on the data that we have available. And my thing is that vaccines work.
Let me ask you a specific question, Dr. Semaj. Do you think preferential treatment in terms of giving preferential treatment to those who are vaccinated versus those who are not should include, for example, paying persons who are not vaccinated less money, or putting them to the expense of having to take a lot of COVID tests at their own expense? Your thoughts on that?
Well, paying less money, that's a whole different thing. But look,
in terms of salary.
No, that's a whole different issue. But for me, having them have to do weekly COVID tests, because the objective behind the whole thing, how do we contain and control the spread of this virus? And
another question. Should you be denied entry to a facility if you're not vaccinated? Should that be part of the preferential treatment for the vaccinated person?
Absolutely, because if you cannot, mask,
including the supermarket.
Again, the supermarkets make it very clear. When we were at a stage where we had no vaccines, we had a policy at most supermarkets: you could not enter without a mask. It was the policy. You can't enter without a mask. It still is the policy.
Should you be denied entry to the supermarket in the future if you're not vaccinated, in terms of preferential treatment? Is that your thinking?
Again, my answer is still yes, because what we now know is that the unvaccinated, the level of unvaccination is really what has fueled the larger increase in the mutation of the vaccine, because it has so much more room to work.
I think we may need to leave it there only because of time. You finish your thought though, Dr. Semaj. I don't want to cut you off.
No, my answer is still yes, because we want to encourage persons to be vaccinated, because the more we have people not vaccinated is the more the mutation continues. And by the way, every year we have to have a booster shot for the vaccine against the flu, because that's how viruses operate. So it's nothing new to say that we have to have a booster shot. Nothing new.
Ms. Harrison Henry, you're saying something?
Yes, I just wanted to say, as we wrap up, it's a complex issue. Yes. There are many of us who have survived without flu booster shots. We have to also look at the real arguments that have been put forward by doctors who speak about an alternative. What are the alternatives? It is merely the jab, or are there alternative treatments? We see Pfizer, who is now developing a pill, or where you can take it, which has antiviral material to suppress your viral load. We see the discussions on ivermectin. The fact of the matter is that the world is in a debate about these vaccines. And, you know, it is very complex. And I think that we need to take time out to examine all the data, because people who have been vaccinated have fell ill. And there are, you know, sometimes you read things, you don't know if it's true, because there's also a lot of misinformation. I don't know that the vaccines have prevented persons from contracting COVID.
It's not a silver bullet.
No.
You can contact it, but the chance of you dying and being hospitalized is close to zero.
Well, I don't know. That there are other studies that
Well,
have
until then, while you wait, I believe we should protect our population with the best information we have.
Getting a signal that we have to leave it there today. I want to thank Dr. Samaja and Mrs. Harrison here for this very interesting and very important discussion. The Morning Watch will be right back after this break.
Auto Loan, helping you on your journey. Roll out and make a statement in your brand new vehicle.
The time by JN will help you find a way is
7:31.
How do we protect our assets from climate change?
Like my little farm? Well, me learn how to plant things between my crops them to hold the soil. Protect it from going with the heavy rain.
Smart and steady, get climate ready.
Visit PPCRJA on Facebook for more on climate change.
Jamaica is a land full of folklore, magic, spirituality, and other rich cultural traditions, customs, and rituals. Many of them are religious in origin. But as believers of the Bible, why do some of us indulge in these traditions and rituals? For instance, is it okay to communicate with ghosts? To find answers to these and more questions, be sure to tune into Love 101 FM Tuesday, August 3 at 10 a.m. for The Rock with host Pastor Harris T. Blair alongside guests Amina Blackwood Meeks and Donald Stewart. That's a discussion on Jamaican rituals, superstitions, and duppy stories. Tuesday, August 3 at 10 a.m. on The Rock, right here on Love 101 FM, the family station. The Rock, solid, objective, substantial.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness is now inviting all persons 18 years and older to make an appointment for COVID-19 vaccination. Appointments can be made by calling 888-1-LOVE. That's 888-663-5683. You can also book online at www.moh.gov.jm. You may ask a relative, friend, or healthcare provider to assist with completing the application. Persons who are due their second COVID-19 vaccine are also invited to make their appointments. On the day of the appointment, individuals should take a government-issued ID, TRN, or letter from a justice of the peace. Persons who have a vaccination appointment during the curfew hours will be granted an exemption to complete their vaccination process and return home. Get vaccinated. Get back to life. This was an important message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Clear Sound Production Services in association with Kevin Downswell Ministries present 658 Best Thank You with Kevin Downswell, Rhoda Isabella, Rondell Positive, Chosen, Petra K, and Ali McNabb. Tickets 3,000, VIP 6,000 at spuropen.com/658fest. Saturday, August 7, 3 to 7 p.m. Police Officers Club, 34 Hope Road. COVID protocols will be observed. An attitude of gratitude. 658 Fest. Thank you. JUTC available to downtown Spanish Town and Portmore after the show.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. Let's take a look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. And in the major daily newspapers today and other happenings, we have here in the Gleaner, Commissioner orders probe in trimming of Rastafarians here at police lockup. We also have a bit of sports news here in the Jamaica Observer. It feels like gold. Matthew Tapper admits that he had started celebrating even as Olympic officials were still trying to determine the silver and bronze medal winners in the women's 100-meter hurdles at the Tokyo Games on Sunday. And those and many other stories in both major daily newspapers. Coming up next, we'll read for you some of the feedback from our Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp question, which is, what would your response be if your under 18-year-old child was given the COVID-19
Alrighty, so that's coming up in the second watch. Should a child be given the COVID-19 jab without parental consent? Yeah, the conversation is coming up after the break. This is Love 101. Have some issues and concerns in your community that you wish could be attended to now? Want a platform to voice those concerns? This could be the place for you. Send your 30-second voice notes describing your issue to 876-997-3125. That's 876-997-3125. Be sure to type a voice for hope before sending the voice note. Then listen on Tuesday at 9:45 a.m. for a voice for hope. Share the concerns you have seen. You know that street light that has not been working for a long time, or your community has not had water for 2 weeks now? Yes, here is somewhere you can share it. And maybe, just maybe, we can get some love on your situation. Remember now, send a 30-second voice note describing your issue and type a voice for hope before sending your voice note to 876-997-3125. A voice for hope. It's a problem, and we need a solution now. Love 101 FM, the family station, bringing a voice to your situation.
Jamaica is a land full of folklore, magic, spirituality, and other rich cultural traditions, customs, and rituals. Many of them are religious in origin. But as believers of the Bible, why do some of us indulge in these traditions and rituals? For instance, is it okay to communicate with ghosts? To find answers to these and more questions, be sure to tune into Love 101 FM Tuesday, August 3 at 10 a.m. for The Rock with host Pastor Harris T. Blair alongside guests Amina Blackwood Meeks and Donald Stewart. That's a discussion on Jamaican rituals, superstitions, and duppy stories. Tuesday, August 3 at 10 a.m. on The Rock, right here on Love 101 FM, the family station. The Rock, solid, objective, substantial.
Oh my gosh, guess what? We're at the next stop of the Isle of Summer tour, St. James.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. Let's join Siobhan for a look at how our social media friends, Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp friends answer today's question. What would your response be if your under 18-year-old child was given the COVID-19 vaccine without your consent? Siobhan, any comments?
All right, seeing some comments here. I think it's for the first watch. Says, this is a free society and everyone has a right to decide what must be taken into their body. From my understanding, you will still contract the virus whether the vaccine is taken or not. That's Maureen Simpson. Karen Davis says, I don't agree with it, Doc. What about persons who have embraced the prevention methods? Let me see what Hyacinth says. Push it down our throats like parents standing over their children with a whip. Swallow it. Okay, then. And let me see. Okay, I think that's all the comments I'm seeing right now. Well, keep it going.
Well, as you say, Siobhan, keep the conversation going. We move right into the second watch. And a report on the LifeSiteNews.com website recently says that Washington, D.C. City Council plans to vaccinate 11-year-olds without parents' knowledge. What do the Jamaican law books say about this? Should parental consent be a factor? Should parents consent before any such thing is done? Do they have the right to say no? What are the implications and concerns if a parent who doesn't comment objects to such a move, if it were ever to occur? It's a discussion we're having. We're not saying that this is what the government is trying to do. We have online to discuss this topic today. Sheena Stubbs Gibson, attorney at law, and well, she is well known for being a regular contributor to a column in a major daily newspaper here in Jamaica. We also have Minister Simon Azan. He is an advocate for the protection of children's rights and a father, and we'll be getting his comments today on the Morning Watch. Minister Simon Azan and Sheena Stubbs Gibson, good day to both of you. How are you both?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you.
Good morning.
Great. Minister Azan?
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Well, thank you.
Enjoying the Olympics.
Yes, yes, and we're here on the morning watch, but this is what it is.
It is what it is.
All right. Never a dull moment on the morning watch. Look, we have a pretty sensitive topic to discuss here in relation to vaccination for children. And the question I'm going to put to you firstly, as a legal consultant, Kina Stubbs gives, should a child be given the COVID-19 jab without parental consent? Your views?
I'm sorry, there's some noise in my background. I'm in my car. Right. No. At this point in time, a child should not, and by that point in time, I mean, given the legislative framework, which speaks to, which defines children, no, a child would need the consent of their parents. The legislative framework does not, at the moment, allow for minors, certain children under the age of 16, is it, or 16, to be given the any kind of medication, any kind of surgical procedure without the input and consent. If you notice, even if you're doing like passports and those stuff for children, they wouldn't have the necessary capacity to consent. And so, no, as it currently stands, it could not be done without legislative change.
I see. And can you speak to, well, you say not at this time. In your opinion, should the law be amended to allow for it?
No, I don't think the law should be amended to allow for a school or the state to unilaterally decide what's best for a child without the input of the parent. It just really flies against a lot of conventions that we've had around this. Like if you do this, then what about contracts? If you say that, okay, parents can, we don't need the input of parents for this particular activity, then what about other activities? You're going to carve out one, and then when you carve out one, you just threaten the whole system, the whole foundation of parental consent for their child's well-being. There are cases where parental consent can be vetoed in certain medical cases if the child's health is at risk. So you can go to the court and get an order from the court, right? So that has always
that would
been
be a
the
court
case.
order. You'd be seeking a court
Right,
order.
right. So that has always been
as opposed
a
to a
legislative.
government bureaucrat simply saying, we need to do this to your child
Right,
now,
absolutely.
for
Right.
example. Understood.
Right.
You should, well, maybe you look at this shortly maybe you look at this shortly in governance policies that is aired here at Love 101 every Friday as well as every
Yes,
Tuesday.
indeed.
Fridays at
Especially given
6:45
that it's so topical at the moment.
Yes, I repeat it.
At the
Tuesday
moment
at
in
7:45
Jamaica,
p.m.
it's 18 and over. But
Yes,
there's
I
conversation elsewhere in the world whether it should be younger. I know in America, in some of the states that started to give children under that age. And then recently in some of the states, like I think Tennessee in part is one that comes to mind, they have gone back on that and said, no, children should not be forced, because they were doing a kind of mandatory thing. Children should not be forced and stuff. So that's happening in some parts of the world, but it's still very controversial, and it's not allowed for in Jamaica right now. COVID vaccine, you have to be 18 and up.
Interesting. Minister Simon Azan, we're almost up on a break, but any thoughts before we head to that break, sir?
Morning. Yeah, the framework for the questions was dealing with two separate countries. One, what is happening in the United States or what they were proposing, and then the question was asked in the Jamaican context. I think on both playing fields, the question I want to ask is who protects the rights of children. There
Hold
has
that
to.
thought. We're gonna head to the break and hold that thought. We'll be right back on the morning watch. Don't go anywhere.
DJ Bongs, Digicel and make we rich together. Make we rich together with Digicel. Just call 142 or dial star 142 number sign from your postpaid phone for a chance to win your share of $42 million in cash and prizes. Enter to get $500 off your monthly postpaid bill and 10 international minutes to USA, Canada, and the UK. Each entry costs $100. From now until September 14th, make we rich together with Digicel.
Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming, and Lotteries Act.
746.
Clear Sound Production Services in association with Kevin Downswell Ministries present 658 Best Thank You with Kevin Downswell, Rhoda Isabella, Rondell Positive, Chosen, Petra K, and Ali McNabb. Tickets 3,000, VIP 6,000 at spuropen.com/658fest. Saturday, August 7, 3 to 7 p.m. Police Officers Club, 34 Hope Road. COVID protocols will be observed. An attitude of gratitude. 658 Best Thank You. JUTC available to downtown Spanish Town and Portmore after the show.
Hey, my peeps, get this on the regular. Your HIV status if you consider. At least if a test once a year. Just 15 minutes and your status clear. Cause it might not show up on your timeline and you learn too late, so you're out of time. A progressive future, mandatory. Really long life, our story. You hear?
Remember, update your status in a real life. Your HIV test today.
Just 15 minutes and your status clear. Really long life, our story. Real long life for say youth, coming from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
The world is full of job opportunities locally and overseas. Let us bring them to you. Register now at Distinction College located at 26 Hagley Park Road, Kingston, 6 Nugent Street, Spanish Town, and Ocho Rios. In 2 to 3 months, earn local and international certificates in housekeeping, food and beverage, food preparation, receptionist, and customer service. Qualified to work in hotels, cruise ships, restaurants, and businesses worldwide. No subjects required, no age limits, no entrance test. Day, evening, and Saturday classes begin very soon at low school fees, easy and flexible payment plans. Call us 356-4167.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. We are having a discussion here in the second watch. Should a child be given the COVID-19 jab without parental consent? And our guests, we have Sheena Stubbs Gibson and Minister Simon Azan. Minister Azan, just before the break, you were about to make a point with active procedure. Who protects the children? Is that your question?
Yes. I lived for quite a while in the US, and this hits close to home because my daughter is of the same age as the subjects who are being considered for this sort of legislative action in the US right now, 11, 12-year-old. And she's a US citizen, and she could... schooling for her could actually have been an option in the US right now. So this hits very close to home because I'm thinking to myself, in a land that has always boasted on protecting their citizens' inalienable rights, all of a sudden it would seem as though children are the ones who would need to be the most protected, the ones who can't speak up for themselves and are most vulnerable to any sort of negative influence, could be considered to be given something into their body without their parents' consent. To me, it's absolutely ludicrous.
Very interesting. Ms. Stubbs, any comments or thoughts on that? Yes, Ms. Stubbs, any thoughts or comments on what Minister Azan just said?
I'm sorry, I got disconnected. I didn't hear.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Did you hear? So maybe you didn't hear a lot of what he said.
And I think he was about to share an experience with his child or something that he said was close to his own situation. I didn't hear after that. But let me ask you this though. I mean, let us say, for example, by a long shot, the government were to implement legislation or even a health policy that would lead in that direction of giving children this kind of inoculation without a parent's consent. I'm sure it would be challenged. I'm sure it would be challenged because let's face it, at the moment, At the moment, adults are not being compelled to take the vaccination. So I can't imagine why some kind of policy or legislative framework would be put in place that is geared at children alone. So just the inconsistency, so that would be discriminatory. And I'm certain it would be challenged on the basis of being a breach of the Constitution by discriminating on the basis of age. If the wider question is, if the government were to change the approach or the legislative framework and attempt to, which is where some countries in the world seem to want to go, to say that all of the population has to take the vaccination, including adults, then the matter would be moot. It would have to be done unless it is successfully challenged in the court as being a breach of fundamental rights. And then both adults and children would advance the same argument. But as long as the framework recognizes now, because currently now we're recognizing that adults have the right to not take the vaccine. We are recognizing that, and we're using incentives to get them to come along. So then why would we want to do something where a parent doesn't believe that they should take the vaccine for themselves, but we pass some kind of framework that allows them to allow the state to take their child and vaccinate their child?
Interesting. Minister Azan?
I agree totally what Councillor is saying. It is unbelievable to think that, as I said before, a country that had always seemed to be at the forefront of protecting their constitutional rights would be even considering this right now. From what little reading I've done on it with that particular case, it seems as though there has been relevant pushback from both governmental and private sector organizations in the United States. So the advocates for and the governing bodies that are there in place to protect the rights of children apparently are doing their duty at this time. Something as simple as we would take it as freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Americans protect that, almost violently. So much so, and so what should we expect, or what more would they be protecting now if their child was to show up at home with a little patch on their shoulder indicating, "Mom, Dad, I got a vaccine today." Can you just imagine?
Minister Samuel, on the other side, do you feel as if a child opts to take the vaccine, then based on the view about rights, do you feel as if a 13-year-old says, "I want to take the vaccine," or a 12-year-old, that because that child has rights, they should be allowed to take the vaccine without parental input?
Absolutely not. A child could decide at 13 years old to go and bungee jump or skydive, which could potentially.
Or the child could be 17.
And that's the argument about rights that you have to be careful of, because if you're going to say, they have rights to not be given it, so then do they have rights to ask for it?
No. What I meant was the children themselves. That's why you have to have advocates in place and government bodies in place, policies in place to protect the children. I don't believe that a child up until a certain age, from a country perspective, I guess different countries have different caps in terms of when does a child cross over from childhood to adulthood? When can that child drink? When can that child publicly smoke? You have a license, do things and be expected to have the rights of an adult. Then all of a sudden now that child is in an adult situation and they can exercise their rights as an adult. I don't believe that children up to that point should be given free will to just do as they please. They have rights, but they also don't have the rights to express them openly and to demand or refuse things unless parental consent is given.
Especially in a context where the parent is still responsible for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting.
And that's why for me, I don't think, like for me, I think like, the right thing, because children these days want to say things like, I have the right to, I have rights, but it must be curtailed, even that it must be within a particular framework. So I am not for taking away the parental right to say what's in the best interest of their children. Sometimes you see this with Jehovah's Witnesses, for instance, and whether or not their children should be given blood transfusions when they're ill. And there have been cases that have gone very in a very unfortunate direction for the children, because the parental right to make that call is recognized.
Yes. Well, in terms of lawsuits challenge DC law allowing kids to get vaccines without parental consent. Doing an internet search here on the Washington Post, 16th of July 2021, 2 lawsuits filed in DC federal court this month of July. Well, that was last month now. Challenge the city law passed last year that allowed minors to be vaccinated without their parents' knowledge or consent. So you see, yes, litigation has started already.
It would likely be challenged in court. Is what I said as earlier as being a breach of the Constitution. I mean, I just don't get how parents could have the right, if you recognize that adults are entitled to research and have their own views. Because personally, I feel that people should take the vaccine, but on the other hand, I also feel people should have the right to not take the vaccine, and certainly to decide that for their children.
Understood.
Right.
And any thoughts on that?
I agree. Without sounding facetious or anything like that. After having lived in the U.S. and my children growing up for some portion of their lives over there, the comparison between the average Jamaican child who, I don't want to say under manners, but has manners and has been brought up in a mannerly household where the parents take the lead in terms of guiding that child's behavior, compared to the average American child who seems to be, for want of a better word, over entitled. I had to guard tooth and nail to ensure that when we came back to Jamaica, my children came back as Jamaicans. You know what I mean? With the thought process of understanding that, hey, you know what, it can be in the world but not of the world, so to speak, where that is concerned. And you really had to guard it, even where disciplinary action is concerned. You have children whistleblowers now who randomly call the police or call the different agencies to report that their parents are abusing them. That sort of thing.
Yes,
and it's dangerous. It's dangerous because it creates a framework now for a very young child now to start getting ideas, as Counselor said, where they believe that they have the right, quote unquote, to exercise those rights, as they please. The good thing is that I believe that there is the relevant pushback now from the different agencies, as I said before, and that is encouraging because parents are not just taking this lying down and just throwing our hands up in the air and giving in and said, okay, well, take away my parental right and you can do with my child as you please. I don't think that's going to fly in any country at this time.
Which is not to say totally that I don't support putting in measures in place to compel like teachers and nurses to be vaccinated, but that's another conversation.
Maybe you should have been with us. We have to leave it there this morning. I want to thank both you, Mrs. Stubbs Gibson, as well as Minister Zan, for being with us.
Elaine Thompson won the race, folks. Elaine Thompson won.
Wow.
Right. Big up. To end the morning watch today. Although I couldn't watch it myself. I want to thank you both for being with us, indeed. Thank you so much. And thank you for listeners for being with us as well. And to get covered to the program, please call our production department at 876-968-95-967. Download our Love 101 app and stay connected to us, the family station. Love 101 FM, the number one gospel station in Jamaica. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and to our guests. I am Stokely Marshall, hanging back in the morning with Siobhan Blair.
And the Morning Watch today was brought to you by Home and Things, your construction finishes superstore. It is approaching 8 to 1, folks, on the family station Love 101.